Many Magic the Gathering players wonder what card dividers to buy. Actually, I don't know if that's a thing, but today I'm going to show you how to get crafty and make them yourself using these materials. So really the minimum you'll need is a ruler, an X-Acto or box cutter, and the construction paper. But these other items sure do make life easier, like this paper trimmer, which you could probably get at Staples or Amazon. You could also use a guillotine, and this thick cardboard for templates, which I'll show you in a bit. You could also use scissors instead of an X-Acto if you're up for it. Writing tools, the cutting mat itself. So this construction paper I got from Dollarama here in Canada. The reason I like this one is because the paper is really thick, like cardstock, and you're gonna need that for when making dividers because you want a certain rigidity or stiffness when you're flicking through. It's acid free, that's always good to protect your cards. In here you get a total 48 sheets, but you get them in these 12 different colors, which means you get 4 sheets in each color. And that's not so bad since we're making 9 dividers per sheet, giving us 36 dividers in each of these colors for a whopping 432 dividers out of this $4.25 pack of construction paper, if anyone's counting. But the thing is, they're not all magic colors. Here are the colors we get in this Dollarama Studio pack. So red for red, that's perfect. I use yellow for gold multicolor cards. Purple I use for artifacts. Blue is blue. Black for black. Orange for set dividers. These I'm not sure what to do with. Pink, purple, darker blue. You also have 2 greens in here. I like this darker green for my green, but once you use up these magic colors over here, I guess you could use these other ones in their place, like the pink one could be red, or I don't know. Actually, it doesn't have white. For white I just use some thick cardstock. It's easy enough to get. Here's what I use for white. Again, it's acid free. I don't know, 110 pounds paper, just called cardstock from Staples. So the dividers are meant for these 3200 count boxes. You could probably adapt the dividers for other kinds of boxes, but really I made them for this. So to determine what size you need, I already cut the template, but to determine, you don't want to go higher than that, obviously, because if it's higher, then you put your lid on it, it's gonna crush it. So you want to probably go just about even with this surface. And then for the width, because not all 2 rows are made the same, the ones on the end are a bit wider, the 2 middle ones are a bit tighter, so I just make them for the middle rows. Of course it's going to be bigger than your magic card because you want the top to stick out. We're going to make tabs, and there you go. These are great boxes. You could store a lot of cards in them. Guys, don't get the 5,000 count boxes. Those are just way too big and they become too heavy to lift. These are more manageable. They're just easier to handle and store. So I really recommend these ones. So the template I got for these exact boxes, maybe the ones you get are different, but the ones I got here, we need them 3 7/8 tall, 2 3/4 wide. Oh, and you may have noticed that I have mine pretty much coated in packing tape. I might show you how to do that in another video, but it's basically to waterproof it. I mean, imagine you have this stored somewhere and you're not there, and then there's a leak from the roof or whatever, and you have drops of water falling on top. If it's not protected, it's going to get in, ruin your cards. Same thing from the bottom. You could have a spill if you have water that accumulates on a surface. Well, it's all protected. The holes are covered. It's like protected all the way through. I mean, it's not waterproof, but at least it's water resistant. You can't dunk this in the ocean, obviously. And I also like coating the insides just to prevent friction, really, for cards. So they'll just slide right in. Less chance of damaging the sides of your cards when you're putting them in, like from scrapes and stuff. The bottom I keep raw because if that's slippery, then your cards are just going to be sliding all over, and you don't want that. Same with the ends, the front and the back. I don't cover those, but there you have it. Okay, so once you've figured out the exact dimensions of your dividers, you want to see how many you can get out of each sheet. In my case, it's going to be 9. These sheets in particular that I bought from the dollar store are exactly 12 inches by 9. But my dividers are going to be 2 3/4 by 3 7/8, which means there's going to be a bit of excess, and I've already done the math on that. So as you can see, I need to trim off 3/4 of an inch from the side and 3/8 of an inch off the bottom. And at this point, you could do it manually with a ruler. You would measure where your lines need to be, draw the lines, and then I would suggest, with the ruler still there, use it to guide your X-Acto or cutter. You could do it that way, but I'm just gonna show you how it's done with the trimmer. I only use 2 sheets at a time, because on a device like this with such small of a blade, if you try to cram or cut through 4 sheets, it's not going to go well. You're asking for trouble. Maybe you could get away with cutting more than 2 at a time if you're doing it manually with an X-Acto, but for this paper trimmer, I just stick to 2. But in my case, my one creates a bit of drag, which actually rips the construction paper. Could be because my blade is dull, but to solve that problem, I discovered that when I put some scrap paper underneath, it doesn't rip. So you can share that tip with whoever you want. Yeah, so we know that the sheet measures 9 inches wide, as you can see when it's lined up with that, 9 inches, and we need to remove 3/4 of an inch, so you just subtract it from the 9, which brings us here. Straighten it out. always double check before you make your cut. It looks good to go. Now from the bottom, I need to remove 3/8 of an inch. And if you recall, I just mentioned that the sheet itself is 12 inches long. Subtract 3/8. 1, 2, 3 brings us right there. And there you have it. So now we have the exact sheet that will give me 9 dividers, and nothing else out of this sheet will go to waste. Let's continue. So the width of the whole sheet is now 8 1/4, and we know that the width of the dividers we want are 2 3/4. So again, we just subtract 2 3/4 off of 8 1/4, and we're left with 5 1/2. Where's my 5? There it is. Bring it to 5 1/2. I have to prep it with the paper underneath. And here we go. Maybe you don't have to do this paper crap on yours. Could just be that my blade is dull. But there's one cut. As you can see, it's exactly the width that I want. And now, oops, I knocked the camera. It's hanging precariously. So now we want another line. It's just going to be exactly half of this. 2 3/4. You could just measure it here. That's 2. Three-quarters. Now I just have to put my paper back. I know it doesn't seem too convenient, but hey. There you go. Now these are the exact same width. All of them. That's how big our dividers are. So now we just have to cut them like that. Now for almost the final cuts, we just need to divide this in 3. It was 11 5/8 long. This strip is 11 5/8 long at this point. So we subtract 3 7/8, which brings it to 7. Where's my 7? And 3/4. So 1, 2, 3. And just to make sure, it's off camera. See, this lines up with that line, and the end meets perfectly. So we're right on track. That's what it looks like. Let's do one more. we need to go to 3 7/8, so we could just do it here. 4, 5, 6, 7. Alright, I think that's lined up. Let's see. Just double check. Alright, looking good. I'll just do the same for the 4 other strips off camera and I'll be right back. Okay, so they didn't get cut exactly right. It happens. You could probably avoid that if you do it manually instead of using the paper trimmer, because you're going to draw the lines, and you could probably avoid it by doing that. So some are a bit longer, some are a bit shorter than my template. Not all that much you could do about the short ones, but let's say if you want to trim the longer ones, you could just use that cardboard template itself, hold it down, and there you go. So once you have these, now it's time to cut the tabs out. Here are the templates I made for the tabs. Now, since we have 36 of these, you're going to want 12 middle tabs and 24 of the side tabs for your commons, uncommons, and then rares and mythics. There are I put the measurements. We already know that that's the width and the length, but then for the tabs, I just cut a 1/2 inch deep and about 7/8 on each side for the middle tab, and then also a 1/2 inch deep, but 1 3/4 for the long. I'm actually going to use these for set dividers, so I'm not going to cut the tabs, but I'll show you how to do that with another color. So there's exactly 1/3 of the stack, and here's how I do this. I just use the template and guide my blade You'll excuse the shaky camera because, like I said, it's hanging attached to the desk. But I start with these lines here, upward, be sure you have a really sharp blade, because if you have a dull one, good luck with that. And really get way into the corner so that it actually cuts. Let's continue the other side here. And I use these for the uncommon tabs. If there are any imperfections, you could just go back in with scissors if you're that much of a perfectionist. And then for the rest, you could do it all in one shot, because you just flip it for the other side. And again, I start with this line over here. probably not going to get all the way to the bottom. Before starting this side. So we got, we want to make sure those are always lined up. All right. Press down firmly. Oh, it moved again. We're almost there. Go. So now you could, split that in half. There's one color done. Alright, so check it out. Here's what pretty much the end product looks like. You got white, green, red. And if you really want to make the most out of this pack of construction paper, once you burn through these colors, you could always substitute them with these ones. They're all tabbed up. So I'll show you how that looks like in the actual boxes. Alright, so here's the end result. Hopefully you guys can see this. I have it divided by color, and then within the color by rarity. Rares and mythics I'll put in the same section. I'll put mythics behind the rares, all in alphabetic order. I use orange for set dividers. You have your colors. I put stickers on the black ones because you can't really read the ink on the black construction paper. You don't need to put in the common tabs for gold. For gold, if there are no gold commons in a particular set. And usually in the back I'll put some kind of padding, like maybe this foam board. So it just makes it so much easier to find your cards when you're making decks. That's how you organize your collection. Hope you enjoyed and stay organized.